Good. All right. So for Rooted, welcome to Rooted Pelvic Yoga Therapy. And in today's class 2 of 3, we're going to do a short sidelying series. And if you would like, have something for your head and neck support, as well as something for between knees and ankles. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of rest, then a tiny bit of activation for the deep rotators of the hip, which are like teammates of the pelvic floor. Okay, so our hips, glutes, deep rotators, if they are weak and not active, the pelvic floor will take over the world and try to do more work than it needs to. If the hips, rotators are tight or overactive, that can also then generate into the pelvic floor as excess tension or guarding. Or if there's asymmetry, right? If there's some asymmetry in what we feel in one hip, one hamstring, which I have as well as many of my students. So even yesterday out for a run, I'm consciously using imagery in my stride to try to help generate more balanced recruitment, okay? So you might feel differences on one side versus the other, and it may give you clues about what your pelvic floor is up to as well, okay? So little hip activation and then a nice supine twist, and then we'll finish at the wall with the legs up, okay? So find your way down to one side. I'm on my right side. If you're on your left, no big deal. Just know that you'll do the other. And we're using just a couple of props, not a full restorative setup like we would in Nourished, the Thursday class. Just enough so that our head and neck can be fairly neutral, aligned with the rest of our trunk. And then a little something between knees and ankles. And that's sufficient for what we're up to right now, okay? So finding your way to the floor and resting into your props, taking a few breaths to slow your pace down. And consciously yield or give the weight of your body to the floor. So doing your best to soften, spread, let go, trust that you're supported. You might continue to rest there the next few breaths, or while you rest, if you want to do a little bit of self-touch, use your top hand to come around back to your sacrum. Maybe a little gentle nudge from the heel of your hand down through the sacrum. Can feel kind of nice for your low back. And from that heel of the hand pressure, start to drape your palm and fingers around the curve of your sacrum. Your fingertips can feel on either side the edge or border of the sacrum, or walking downward lower, you might be able to feel either side of your tailbone. And that's quite low. If it's tender, go next door to where it's tender. So go a little higher, lower, one side or the other, or use less pressure. So just getting acquainted. We're not asking for anything to change. Just getting acquainted with like, wow, my tailbone is like really down there, right? Like maybe that's a new experience for you to connect with. Okay. And on either side, both sides of the sacrum and tail, tip of your tail, we have the deep pelvic diaphragm that fans forward, scoops forward into the pubic bone and sit bones. Okay, come around now to the sit bone, the top sit bone. Just nice, gentle, easy palpation of all those tissues. And then rest your hand on the outermost part of what we feel are the hips. And that's your femur. That's part of your thigh bone, actually. Okay, it's the greater trochanter if you want the technical term. So we're gonna take that outer widest part of our femur and we're gonna roll it around to the back to open the knee, and then slowly close the knee. So knee goes up because the femur's rolling back in the socket, externally rotating, and then internal rotation back together. So if that's helpful, you can nudge or encourage the greater trochanter to come around and down to the back, and then around to the front to close. Meanwhile, your trunk is pretty still, asking just your femur to rotate. Little engagement and say, wee, hello to those muscles, and then they slowly lengthen to come back down. Feel your knee come together. Knees come together a little firmer to press the pinky edge of your foot up. So now we're actively internally rotating. Press pinky edge up, 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 and then slowly come back down. Good, so head, heart, pelvis, pretty still. Focused effort through the hip, and then come back down. Your breathing can do what it wants to do. Good, one more round, pressing top pinky edge of the foot up. You might feel your bottom leg engage against the floor a little bit, and that's okay. A little bit of a dual effort, and then come on down. Good, press the foot out, like stamping your foot across the room on the wall. You can decide if that's enough, or maybe we lengthen crown of the head just a little bit. Maybe we add the arm in some way. Good. And with the leg lifted, go a little bit behind the plane of your body. So I'm taking my leg back in space a little and turning it in just a little. Toes towards the ground. I'm going to tap my big toe, tap my big toe, tap my big toe. Good. Only 4, just really specific, small movement. Last one. Yeah. Good. And bring the leg in. Hug it close and open out into a supine twist. Spend a few moments there. You can always bend that arm if there's too much strain or stretch. Bend the elbow, bring your hand back to the shoulder. You could also do circles with your elbow while you're there. Good. And then when you're ready, we're going to attempt to roll to the other side. Your arms might give a little press down into the floor. Find your way over. Reconfigure, of course, in your space to make it work. And finding side 2. So elbow underneath you can be out along the floor. The top arm can tuck in or rest alongside your waist, your hip. And find that side lying posture where you feel like your head, heart, and hips are pretty aligned. Asking yourself to rest. Seeing if you can allow yourself to give in, be held or carried by the ground. Continue that allowance, that unfolding, unwinding, and trust your instincts, whether you rest there or do the self-touch that we did from the other side. So maybe bringing the heel of your hand towards the top of your sacrum, little gentle nudge downward if that feels good. And then making contact, the whole round cupped palm of your hand against the curve of the sacrum, and maybe starting to engage with the sides of your sacrum. The muscle development might feel different on one side than the other. That's okay, because that's what it is. And yet, as we practice, you might notice that that changes, that can evolve over time. So the side that overworks can learn to relax and flow. The side that underworks or feels sleepy will learn to perk up and do its share. If you'd like, trace lower down the sacrum, engage with the sides of the tailbone. And again, if there's any tenderness there, do less pressure or go to a spot that feels tolerable. So we're not making anything different or change. We're not even necessarily massaging. We're getting acquainted with the bones and acknowledging the depth of connection and support that they give us with the deep pelvic diaphragm, fanning from there forward across the pelvic bowl into the front. Okay, find your sit bone for a moment. The inner surface, inside contour, is where those connections come from the tailbone and sacrum, and they fan all the way up to the inside of the pubic bone. And then if we come right to the outermost or highest point of the mountain when we're laying on our side, acknowledge that that's part of your femur. That's part of the long thigh bone coming up into your hand. And then that bone detours into the socket, different angle into the ball and socket joint. So to externally rotate, we're going to send the greater trochanter around to the back and then coming forward back to where we started. Rotating open through the knee by spinning the ball in the socket, roll it back and down, and then close. Re-engage, externally rotating, pressing the knee up, greater trochanter drops down the back, and closing. Good, last one. When your knees join back together, press them a little firmer together and take the internal rotation. Pinky edge of the foot presses up, little hold, and then slowly come back. 4 repetitions. Noticing how the muscles engage. And trusting the hips to do this for you. So letting your eyes soften, jaw slack, neck is supported. Let your head rest on the blanket. Got one more internal rotation. You might feel your underneath side engage against the floor too. And then come back to parallel. Good. Take your top foot, press out like you're stamping on the wall. Have a moment there, connect up through the crown of your head. You might just sense that connection, or you might actually lift your head and neck off the blanket. And then that top leg, let it come a little bit behind you. Turn in a little and tap your big toe on the ground. And then tap front and 2 and front and 3 and front. Last one, slow and simple. Good. Bring the knee all the way back up, and we'll take our twist. Good. Up to you. If that shoulder doesn't quite make it to the ground, you could add a blanket underneath or bend the elbow or stay in motion. Take circles with the top elbow. Gradually encouraging more freedom, more ease through the thoracic spine, the ribs, the chest. One more big inhale. And as you exhale, feel your arms press against the ground. Maybe rolling yourself through center. And then curl all the way up on your first side. Take a moment there. And then find your way to seated. Good. We're going to shift over to the wall. Legs up the wall. We'll do a tiny bit of bridging, wall bridging into wall baby. Wall baby is happy baby pose, but with our feet supported by the wall. Okay. And yes, we're right on time. So find your way to the wall. You don't have to have your sit bones right against the wall. You can give yourself a little bit of space. If you have a soft, squishy, inflatable something or a foam yoga block, you might use that between your knees for the bridging. You don't have to, but you can. Okay. In particular, if you're finding that there feels like in your body, your sense of your body, if it feels like there's a lack of connection through the inner thighs or through the front of your pelvic floor, so for example, bladder control, or perhaps sensation with intercourse, orgasm, etc., right? So the front part of the pelvic bowl is connected to that adductor, that midline connection. Or if you tend to feel like you need more strength, more control, more engagement, adding something between the knees can be really helpful in that regard. And even if you tend towards tension, like historically my pattern has been more tension than needed through the pelvic floor, even if that's true for you, engaging a little bit is still good. And we will downregulate and open and release after, okay? So go ahead and find your way to the wall. Line yourself up so you feel like you are perpendicular to the wall. So you might take a little sit up like our Pilates 100 and line up feet, pubic bone, navel, sternum, nose. Sometimes we feel centered and then we look and we're actually off kilter. Add the ball or block if you want one, and it's just there to use lightly. So I'm not going to ask you to crush it. It's not maximal effort. Maybe 20 to 30 to 40% effort. So a little squeeze of your object. Then press your heels against the wall and take your hips up just a couple of inches. Full, steady, calm breath. Stay with your exhale. Give it a little extra squeeze and feel that connection through the front of the pelvic floor, more around the urethra or vaginal opening. And then slowly set your pelvis down and let go of the squeeze. Relax. Roll your tail out towards the wall. We want to turn the muscles off, just as important as turning them on. So here we go again. Heels press into the wall. Feel the hamstrings, glutes kick in. When you add the adductor squeeze of your object, you'll feel that inner thigh connection up into the front of the pelvic floor. And as you lift off, maybe you go a little higher into your bridge. The higher you go with your hips, the more important your support becomes from your shoulders and your triceps. So the arms are actively pressing down while the hips drive up. 3, 2, little extra squeeze if you want. And then slowly roll down, articulate the spine, unfurl the sacrum, the tail, and release your object. Take it out from between, let it go. And then from there, you can choose, do I take legs straight up, resting there? If you want wall baby, like happy baby, you're gonna take your feet down, bend your knees, and then heel toe your feet apart. Whatever amount feels like, yeah, that's a good angle for my hips, for my body. So the floor has our back and the wall has our feet. Letting the bones rest into gravity. You can settle in to stillness, or you might take a little windshield wiper or rocking side to side. Either way, the focus is relax, rest, down-regulate, be supported. So not just acknowledging the inner thigh stretch that you might feel, but also trusting that the pelvic organs are offloaded in this position. They're not resting into the sling of the pelvic diaphragm. So could we trust, just for the next few breaths, that we can relax and release the whole pelvic bowl? Feel your pelvis grow a little heavier. Eyes, tongue, jaw a little softer. Good. And then let your feet start to inch their way towards each other, bringing the legs back to parallel for a moment. And then find your way rolling to one side. And find your way upright to a seat. And you can sit however you are most comfortable.